Hello, Serge, and thanks for taking the time today for this interview. I really appreciate your participation and want you to know that anything we talk about is confidential. The purpose of this interview and recording is to evaluate my interviewing skills and techniques. And nothing, we're not trying to record you and your secret and deepest thoughts. Also, if there's anything you don't feel comfortable talking about, please let me know and we'll move on. And if the questions I ask and you answer may have had different answers in another, perhaps earlier time in your life, feel free to make that distinction. The interview will take about 50 minutes between my questions and our discussion. Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Good. What, if anything, do you know about the Enneagram?
I don't know anything.
Okay. The Enneagram is a personality typing system comprised of 9 types. It's a system that helps us understand more about how we see and operate in the world in different ways, giving us clarity in understanding our underlying motivations. I've personally found it an extremely useful tool in relationships, both with myself and others. And while we all want the same things at times, the Enneagram can point out the difference in why those things are important to us as individuals. Any questions before we start?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just going to be an open
Okay.
mind. Except, I guess I should just say disclaimer that this won't go on a website or anything.
Will not.
Okay.
Will not. It's only for we're recording it now, but the person that's going to look at it is my teacher.
Okay.
And then it gets deleted.
Okay.
So we get started. Could you give me 3 adjectives that you would use to describe yourself?
Curious, apprehensive, active.
Curious, apprehensive, and active?
Active.
Okay, good. Nice. Would you describe what being productive means to you?
Wow. Having a outward positive interaction with my day, rather than contemplating my actions, I do what is in front of me.
Okay. Good. Does finding or taking shortcuts come easy for you?
That's an interesting question. Well, I guess it depends on what it is.
Okay.
Shortcuts to me have a negative connotation.
Okay.
They're especially in the type of work that I do. So, which is cooking. Doing the things the right way is important for me.
Okay. You take pride in what you accomplish.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
How important is it for others to recognize when you've been successful or completed a project?
Others is a really big word. There are few people that I really, if they approve of what I'm doing, then that means a lot to me. I mean, as you know, what I do is public. So I would say there's probably 10% of the people whose feedback for me is reassuring, confirming, validates what I do.
So it's selective.
Selective.
You don't need everybody to.
No.
What happens when you don't receive recognition, even if it's from that 10% that you just described?
Then I really feel, I'm more of a feeling type of a guy, pay attention to what motivated me to doing what I did, how I did it, and what were my feelings in the process and after the completion. Do I feel good about it, or did I do it as a reaction or as fulfilling a quick need?
Good.
No? Yeah.
Good. What happens when you think about failure?
I see it as a great opportunity if I'm open to it.
Has that always been the case? Or is that something you've kind of...
No. Failure to me was something to really fear and not partake in at all. I think with 37, 38, I'm 51 now, so 37, 38, I realized, well, failure is if I don't do something, I won't know. So, there is no, like, I hate to be cliche, it's not the failure that matters, it's the process, and do I gain from it? I may not achieve what I had originally intended or what was in my mind, but I won't know what it is that I want to achieve unless I do. And the doing, it's not really failure, it's not achieving my idea. So by materializing the thought, I see it's not there, so then I know what to do next. I hope that makes
It
sense.
sounds like you've turned failure from a fear-based sort of thing, maybe earlier in your life, to something that has tremendous information.
That's a great way of putting it, yeah.
Okay.
Only if I'm awake to it, though.
Right.
You know, often if I'm not awake, I won't even notice that it was a failure.
Right. Okay. How competitive are you compared to, say, others you know?
I am competitive, but yes, I'm competitive.
Okay. Across the board, or in things that matter to you?
Oh, definitely things that matter to me, such as my creative work.
Right.
But competitive, I think, limits it. I want to do well.
Right.
You know, in what it is that I do, I want it to turn out well. Something that I would feel very comfortable and confident and good about.
So it sounds to me like you're concerned with your best efforts as opposed to everybody else saying, wow.
Yeah. I mean, is the creative process, is my work, are my values, are my aesthetics reflected in what I'm doing? And so I guess I may be competitive with my own aesthetics.
Okay, got it. Good, that's a good answer. Thank you. What about relaxing? How easy is it for you to relax and have downtime?
Well, if meditation is relaxing, then
Okay.
I do it often, and it's important because it's I do it, even if it's for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Photography is one way of relaxing. Laying down and listening to music is one way of relaxing. Playing the piano is one way of relaxing.
So you're able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. When faced with difficult circumstances or even a dangerous situation, would you describe what role courage plays for you? Maybe focus on the difficult situation part. Dangerous situations can be, hopefully, far and few between.
Well, courage for me, the definition of courage is moving forward with faith.
Okay.
So, I don't, I mean, a dangerous situation implies that maybe my life is in danger, and if I'm supposed to die, I'm gonna die. Like, I don't think at 51 I have a fear of death. But courage is important in everyday life, for me. learning to respond and not react is what I am really interested in now in my own life.
So in terms of scanning for danger or tough, something difficult, it doesn't sound like you do that, but would you say you do or not do that? It sounds like whatever shows up in front of you at the moment is what you're there for, not, maybe this will happen or that'll happen. Some people do that. They kind of...
Yeah, no, I'm not that linear of a thinker.
Okay.
Yeah, I present, I'm present, and then I assess as things happen. But with the definition of courage is moving forward with fear. You have fear, but you're doing it anyway. I think I have to muster up courage all the time.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Very interesting answer. What about authority figures? How easy is it for you to trust those in charge?
That's a very good question. I have two ways of dealing with it. There are authority figures that you just have to deal with, such as a police officer or a judge. And then there are authority figures such as a boss that you work for, a manager that you work for. And the former you just deal with. The police officers, you just deal with them. It doesn't matter what type of personality or how they treat you. But the second one, I have a difficult time if I don't respect them.
Okay.
So I have a hard time with positional power, but I have a great time, and I hope to learn all the time with people that have personal powers.
So the qualities, what qualities make someone in charge worth trusting? I think you just said it by saying, there's got to be a level of respect there.
Yeah, and
integrity on their part,
right.
In terms of.
I mean, do they possess personal power? What they are asking you to do, or what they are demanding of the team, are they themselves capable of doing it? Are they part of the team, or are they just ordering the team?
When it comes to trusting people in general, how easy is that for you?
Well, the problem with me is that I trust before I get hurt.
Okay.
And I'm learning to have more boundaries within me. I'm a pretty trusting person.
Okay.
In fact, this last weekend I was with some new people, this past weekend I was with some new people, and I am myself. I trust them, and we talked about different things. I trust that we're all human beings and we have good intentions until I get hurt, which is, I don't recommend.
Right.
I need to be a little bit more cautious.
Good. That's a good answer. How much time and energy do you put into being loyal to others on a team, or in a work environment, or with friends? Loyalty mean a lot to you? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to tag the noun a friend, then loyalty is essential. But I spend a lot of time, because as you know, I have my restaurant, so it's very important that my staff knows that I'm loyal to them.
Right.
Because that's the only way I can get loyalty back.
And you want loyalty back.
I 100% want loyalty back. Yeah.
We touched on it a little bit before, but what would you say in general? What role does fear play in your life? What purpose does it serve, and maybe how does it get in your way?
Whoa,
Again, you explained before that you have a
Yeah.
nice way of dealing with this. It was tied into the courage question.
Yeah,
You described that.
that's a really loaded question. I mean, as you know, I think about that often. I think fear is a natural part of life. It's just we have it. But I do also believe in the innocent courage of a child. And in my creative life, part of my life, in the creative process, I continually try to nourish that childish, fearless disposition towards life. And at 51, I replaced the word fear with wise. Am I wise in this situation? What is the wise response to this?
Done a lot of work on that, I can tell. It's a really nice way to describe it. Your process. Do you see yourself as being a good mediator? And what I mean is, whether within a group of people, say at your restaurant, or people you know personally and professionally, are you able to kind of take into account and help people to possibly get along or come to a happy medium?
That's a great question, and I'll have to say yes, if I don't have the paternal element. Sometimes I have a paternal element that can turn me into like a teacher or a dogmatic person. But I'm naturally a very empathic person. And I do like helping people. I do like being a soul or an entity that can assist people in deciphering what is happening with them. And when I'm successful at that is that when I'm just a listener, empathic listener, and pose questions so they can decide. But not very successful when I take the role of I know better.
Okay, good. That's an important distinction. How easy is it for you to say no?
It's becoming easier as I get older.
That's nice to hear that. Yeah. You describe that a little more? Maybe how it was and what it's like?
Well, my insecurities of wanting to be liked often turned me into a doormat.
Right.
And I remember this really distinctly at 41. A friend of mine that had known me for nearly 8 years by then, she asked me something. I said no, and then 2 days later we met for coffee, and she said, it's really nice that we have a conversation and you say no, but you don't give this extensive excuse as to why. You just said no. And I remember that to this day. It was in the West Village in a cafe.
It was a big turning point, I guess.
Yeah. Like, I would like to, but I can't.
Right. It's important to do that.
Yeah.
What do you do when something, perhaps unpleasant or uncomfortable, that comes up that you need to address with someone in your life? So what do you do with it? Do you avoid it? Do you confront it? Do you minimize it?
Again, in the past I would avoid it, hoping that it would blow away.
Right.
But again, as you know, I separated from my partner 4 years ago, and one of the biggest gifts of that experience is addressing it. But take the time to learn how to respond to it. As my father used to say, you can say, please have a seat, sit down, or get your ass down. They all say the same thing. So figuring out how to respond is easier rather than pushing it under the carpet.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel if people don't notice you or what you have to say?
I think it really depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm at a dinner party and I say something and people don't,
Not too cool.
Yeah, I would feel like, oh. Or, but, I mean, there are days at the restaurant that nobody will say anything nice.
Right.
That would make me feel very uncomfortable previously. But now it's like, okay, like the rest of us. I mean, I like to be noticed, but I don't like to be noticed for the sake of being noticed.
Right.
It just...
So for the sake of being noticed would be for the sake of fulfilling my insecurity? Is that what you're saying? In other words, please notice me, or if you notice me, great, and if you don't, okay.
Yeah. There are people that will notice me for no reason, and there are people that will not notice anything. So I think they're equally unnecessary to pay attention to. Again, this is the only place that I can really answer this from is, I go to every table and ask how everything is if I have the opportunity to do that. And I would say there's a 5 to 10% of the customers that will respond. And as a person who's worked in the kitchen, who's thought about that dish, who's prepared that dish, and has an emotional attraction or relation to that dish, I am sensitive to some of the responses. And it's incredibly satisfying when few people get exactly what you're doing. They understand. My ears perk up, and I want to know more about them, and that becomes a dialectic which I learn from. But so it's great to be noticed in that aspect.
Okay.
But I've learned that it doesn't come. I've learned not to expect it from everybody.
Good. That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
How do you make your wishes known to others in a particular situation? Say you need to do that. How do you do that? Make your wishes known to others?
Again, this is a recent development for me. Previously, I wouldn't do it like this. Just by simply letting them that I would prefer this, or will you please, close the window, or can we lower the music? Do you feel like listening to something else? I lived with a guy for 14 years. When we went out to eat, he would always reach out and touch my plate before I had even had a chance to do it. I never really told him, I think had never told him anything until the end of our relationship, that it's like, at least let me touch my plate before. So I've learned that there is nothing wrong with saying, this is what I would prefer.
It's okay for you now, as opposed to say less so in the past, to say what you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it really just depends on how you say it as well.
Right.
And it's a great thing to have come to recognize.
How easy is it for you to know your own agenda?
Oh my goodness, it's how easy it is for me to know my agenda.
To know what you need to do.
Look, I know what I need to do today. I know what I need to do this weekend.
Good.
But beyond that, I don't know.
Right. It doesn't sound like you're too interested in knowing beyond that.
Well, I mean, at 51, I would. Am I gonna be living in Armenia for the rest of my life? I mean, I asked that question, but I have no idea.
Right. How do you handle situations that make you feel angry?
That's a great question, and again, previously I would express my anger. Now I have learned, for me, that anger really is not an emotion. It's a it's a form of expressing an emotion. So when I feel angry, the first question I have to ponder is, what is making me behave like this? It's more of a behavior than a feeling. So I try to think about, understand what is the feeling that I have. And once I realize what is the feeling, then I respond.
And your anger is more informative and palpable as opposed to being, oh, I'm angry, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are often situations in the kitchen where I get frustrated.
Right.
So as a result, I get angry and I'll raise my voice and I'll, blurt out things. But this morning I was angry and I realized I'm more disappointed. So I'm disappointed. So when you're disappointed, what do? You're just, am I going to call this person and say, that's really fucked up of you? No, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
I didn't get what I thought I should get.
An involved answer. Do you consider yourself to be someone who has high standards, and say, if you do, higher than most others? On any number of levels.
Yeah. I mean, I think I live a life full of aesthetics right now. So I think aesthetically speaking, my appreciation is much deeper and more evolved than others. That's just the way it is now. And I would like to formulate it as deeply and as fully as I can.
Right.
The depth of my own perception and understanding of aesthetics. I also am learning to be a much better leader. So I think I need to say that.
Okay.
Because I am a leader at what I do.
So when you describe the aesthetics, though, would you say your perception of aesthetics is higher than most others? Or your level, your standard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to do things the right way and adhere to a process?
Very important.
Okay.
Very important.
So we spoke about shortcuts before.
Yeah.
When it comes to something you know how to do well and you know the way to do it, that doesn't sound like a shortcut situation. Or could it be?
Well, again, a perfect example, I like to speed things up in the kitchen, the process. So I made this mint ice cream, from a cookbook, and the book has gotten a lot of attention. And I thought, the number of eggs is too little. He's using a lot of the stabilizer. I was like, okay, but this book has gotten a lot of attention. So I did it, and I tasted it, and I thought, this is kind of bland. And one of our regular customers came in, and he had mint ice cream. He likes it. It's like, oh, did you change the recipe? I was like, as a matter of fact, yes, I did. It has a lot less eggs. So I am not interested in shortcuts. I am interested in, is there a way of doing something differently that will result in a better product? If there is, I'm always open to learning. So
it sounds to me like you use your talents and expertise to make an improvement on something.
Yeah, if you can make an improvement, 100%, who wouldn't want that?
That's very good.
But this was not an improvement. This saved time and money, but it wasn't an improvement.
Right.
In the flavor and the end result of the ice cream.
Would you say you like to get things done correctly or quickly?
Quickly and correctly. I like to accomplish things properly. Yeah.
So
I think it's
so if you had to choose one, quickly or correctly?
Correctly.
Correct. Are you aware of a voice in your head or on your shoulder that tells you about what's right and what's wrong? whether it's something in the kitchen or something you see out in the world with the way other people behave, it could be on any number of levels, but some people have this internal voice. Would you ascribe to that or not?
I think we all have that
Right.
voice.
Okay.
So yes, I'm aware of that, but I think it's important to add that again at 51, it's important that voice is my voice.
Right.
So I am learning how to respect and incorporate what is positive about that voice into my head and then replace whatever is not positive with my voice.
Okay, so it sounds
So bring it together, mine and that voice.
So it sounds to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like you recognize that you have that voice and you're aware of it, but that it doesn't really run your show. Like in other words, you described it as getting, as long as it's your voice and not
Right.
some authority figure
Right.
from your childhood or
Right.
this or that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds very healthy. How important is it for you to be organized?
It's very important given certain circumstances, and other circumstances I could care less. But yeah,
So it's
very
not
important.
an all the time thing.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself to be a creative person?
Yes.
Yeah. What's important about creativity in your life?
I think every time I create something, I get closer to God.
Wow. Wow. And is that, could you give an example of that? Is it strictly at work? Is it in the garden? Is it, I mean,
Well,
there are a
I
number of
think,
places.
for me, the creative process is a means of seeing, perceiving, feeling. And I may not be able to explain this to you. There are days that I just put things together because that's what I have to do.
Right.
And come up with dishes. And there are days that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but I am working with the faith that whatever it is that I'm doing, whatever the elements are that I'm putting together, they're going to come together. And I remember doing this dish several years ago, and this is, we're talking about like 10 years ago, and I had no idea what I was going to do, except that I knew I was doing the salmon, the figs, the sauce, the asparagus, and the plates were in front of me. I grabbed the asparagus and I was planning on plating it, and I'm not kidding you, the asparagus fell on the plate. One of the asparagus fell on the plate. I had no intention of doing that. And that I can't express the level of intensity of emotions that created in me. I was really overwhelmed by tears and joy, and that was it. Like, this is it.
That's a great description of
And
your
I-
creative process.
And I made the dish.
Right. So it was this kind of free-flowing creativity that just, it sounds like you're right in your wheelhouse when you do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that has happened. That experience has happened to me. That experience gave me faith that if I am being genuine, naked, open to the process, I may not know what I'm doing, but it will come together, and it's those moments, it's those processes that, when you said what is important about creativity, I think it's creativity like that that brings me closer to whatever God may be.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to describe God, but it, there's an intensity and depth of connection that indisputable in moments like that.
How well would you say you express yourself? I am sitting here, I have an opinion on that. How well would you say you express yourself?
I think in situations like this, hopefully I express myself freely and concisely, maybe not concisely, but well. Yeah, I like expressing myself.
It seems like you do.
Yeah.
When you're in a relationship, would your partner describe you as intense or more even-keeled?
Oh, definitely intense.
Intense.
Yeah.
And what kind of challenges do you face in relationships? What are the things that have shown themselves throughout your relationships? Feeling misunderstood, dissatisfied? Do you ever feel unacceptable? What?
I've had one relationship in my life that lasted 14 years, but I've had several very small ones. But I think the most uncomfortable thing is sexual intimacy for me.
Okay.
Feeling, and I don't know if I should say this or not, because I have rape and molestation in my life.
Okay.
So sexual intimacy is it's marred with a lot of uncomfortable feelings, memories, which are physical memories more than cognitive memories.
Would you say that so the kinds of challenges you face in relationship sounds to me like it's tied to your very your gift for expressiveness, perhaps in a sexual nature, is your challenge because of what you just described?
Yes, and I'm lucky that I have.
Right.
But when there's a long-term relationship, that intimacy becomes almost it becomes, rather than a beautiful, rewarding thing, an ugly. And I'm hoping that in my next relationship I'll be with a partner that would help me work through that, because I know it requires a partner to work through that.
It sounds like you're aware of it, and that's probably a big step towards doing that.
Yeah.
Does it resonate for you to have feelings of longing?
What does that mean, feelings of longing? Yeah.
Oh, I wish I had this in my life. Whether we just spoke about relationships. I wish I had the relationship I've always dreamed of. I wish I lived here. I mean, it can go from superficial to very eternally deep.
Again, that was true for me often, but at 51, I find things like that. Like I want to write. I wish I were a better writer. That's always in my head. So every day I have to tell myself that, well, if you want to be a better writer, you have to write. I wish I were a better photographer. Well, you have to take a photography class. I wish I were going to Iran. Well, I am going to Iran. So it's no longer a longing. It doesn't have a romantic notion to it as much as, wishing. It's like, okay, can you do something about it? Then do it. So.
How comfortable are you with intense emotions? You described your partner in a relationship you mentioned would describe you as intense. So tied into this question, how comfortable are you with intense emotions? For example, sadness. Are you okay with being sad?
Yeah.
Or happy? Or
100%. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Sadness, happiness, frustration. I'm not very good at, but melancholy. Yeah. All of and betrayal. I'm not good with betrayal, but I feel them all.
So the emotions, you don't run from your emotions. You're able to kind of hold them or be there with them.
Yeah, again, one of the gifts of being older is I like Chopin a lot, and I like Chopin's Nocturne, and the realization that, oh my God, Chopin wasn't jumping up and down when he played when he composed the nocturnes. So it's not the feeling that scares me or uncomfortable; it's what I do with it.
Right.
That's the interesting thing. So
What's it like for you to feel ordinary?
I feel a little bit bored, honestly. I mean, I am an ordinary person. I wake up, I make my bed, I eat breakfast, but I do want to see things that others don't. And I guess in that,
So you make use of feeling ordinary.
yeah. So in that sense, ordinary to me is kind of boring.
Right. But it's not a place you live.
I mean, I live an ordinary life,
Right.
but I don't think my perception is ordinary.
Right. Right. Would you say you're someone who places a great deal of importance on relationships?
You mean personal relationships?
Personal,
like love relationships?
Or yeah, you kind of go down. Sounds like you're starting to answer it. What about? Is it more? Do you place more importance on personal relationships or relationships, say, with the trade or the group or the?
I have a lot of respect for the relationship that I have with the few close friends that I have in my family. Yeah. I mean, they're a great way of my being mirrored.
And then would you say getting beyond that inner circle, that the level of importance that you place on it, not gets less, but is not as strong as that first one?
Yeah, the professional one is professional networking, and that's important in a professional manner. But on a personal, spiritual, human, loving way, the few friends that I have and my family.
How good are you at sensing other people's needs?
Unfortunately, I am too good.
Okay. Would you say you feel calling in that? You feel calling of sorts to serve others? Well, you're good at sensing other people's needs. Those people, would you say with those people, you said you were too good at it, would you say that you have this kind of, well, I'm here because I'm here to help them?
Well, I think through my work I do that.
Right.
And through my employees, I'm always there to help them. Again, for me the most important thing that I've learned is that if my motive is pure for wanting to help and not for me to assert myself.
Right. Okay. How much would you say you enjoy the feeling of, say, being indispensable to others? Or is that a feeling?
I mean, everybody likes to be wanted and needed, but I think indispensable is everyone's dispensable.
Right. How good are you at, we touched on this a little bit before, but how good are you at sensing your own needs? It's a little redundant to something I already asked you, but you said that you've gotten better at that.
Yeah, I'm getting better at that, and that's, I don't know the answer at that because honestly, John, I often ask, are you aware of your own needs?
Right, like we were talking about it as asking, for what you want. You've gotten better at that. But I guess maybe the question could be more relevant in asking it in light of, do you feel like there are times when you disregard your needs? Or you can be very unconscious to what it is that Sarah's needs?
Again, as I get older, it's easier for me to respect my needs. But, last week I worked from 6 to 1 in the morning, got up and worked 6 to 12 in the morning because I was needed. I had to do that. The circumstances called for it. I think maybe the question is more on a personal level. And on a personal level, I'm getting better in understanding my own needs.
How do you feel when your efforts aren't appreciated? And I think efforts in terms of your relationships, like you mentioned your close circle, your family, so in the idea of being there for them and maybe showing up in
I
any
feel
number
a
of
bit
ways.
disappointed.
You would be.
Oh, yeah.
Can you express that to them?
I would ask, like, did you guys like this, or
Yeah.
what happened with that?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because before I would need the confirmation. Now I don't really need it, and I will question, well, did they like it? Did they not like it? Did they read it? Did they not read it? I recognize now that everybody has many other things in their heads, that I'm not the most important thing.
I gotcha. So, right into that, and I think so when you have that feeling of sensing and the question is, could you describe your feelings when you sense you are being left out of a situation? And I think implicit in that is you should be included.
Yeah, I mean, on personal level, it's hurtful, or I feel hurt, or and this is with my family and close friends. On the professional level, I try to be wise about it and see if I need to present myself differently, or market myself differently, or should I have done a different dish.
Right.
So there are very different responses depending on whether it's on personal or professional level.
Right. It sounds like you're getting a good handle on at least being aware of that and not tying it into, when that happens, not being identified with, but nobody recognizes it, it must suck. Doesn't sound like you do that.
No, that voice is pretty quiet in my head. That comment doesn't happen in my head. No, it's like, well, what? Okay, this didn't work. What can I learn from this? Is there something to learn from this? And if there is, I'll use it next time.
It's often said that in life there are leaders and there are followers. How do you see yourself in the context of that? And you did mention before that you see yourself as a leader.
Well, I'm a chef owner of a restaurant.
Right.
I am both a good leader and a good follower.
Okay, good. That's an interesting balance.
It just depends on the situation I'm in.
How sensitive, in another situation outside of your restaurant, how sensitive are you to who's in charge? How do you decide what role you're going to play with that person when you recognize that? It might be in the context of another group, or maybe the pecking order.
I think one of the gifts that I have is that I can be a good joker.
Okay.
Meaning a good joker in a card game.
Yeah.
So depending on what the need may be, I often do not. As I said earlier, I have a very hard time with leaders that I don't respect.
Yeah.
And I have a tremendous admiration for leaders that I respect.
Right.
So I will do. So. Not in every. My strengths don't come into play in every situation.
Yeah. It seems like you're aware of that too.
Yeah.
How about rules? What are rules like for you, in general and specific? All rules matter, or rules that?
No, not all rules don't matter. I mean, I'm honestly, I'm up the rules are made to be broken.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in my personal and professional, rules are to be made broken unless they're my rules. That's Sarah. No, I mean, I have a lot of, I have respect for them, but, and they're essential, and I don't break every rule. But I'm not one guy that will follow the rules because it's a rule.
They have to have a reason, Mike. It just sounds like what you just say about the restaurant. You didn't sit down and say, well, it's a restaurant, we need rules. You said, we need rules because we need things to, to have some certain structure or whatnot.
Yeah, like, you gotta come to work at 4, you can't work with your phone on, your
Right.
phone goes away someplace else when you're at work because none of us should be distracted, including me, when we're working,
We touched on this before in one question, and you described it as possibly being different in the past. At least that's how I remember it. Do you consider yourself to be direct, and if necessary, confrontational?
Yes.
Okay. When would you?
I've
Go ahead.
become a lot more tactful
Right.
in the confrontational part. Before I didn't have any tact.
So you found a better way to do it, and
Much
you know
more
when you
tactful,
have to.
yeah. But I don't hesitate.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that anger, and you touched on this before too, because it's like you described connecting anger to what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is the exterior reaction
Mm-hmm.
to a situation. But would you say that's readily accessible to you? It sounded to me like it was, and you were able to look at it and be aware of it. But the question is, would you say that anger is readily accessible to you? And if yes, then perhaps excessively so? Didn't sound like that. But.
Not excessively. I wouldn't say excessively, and I'm very proud of that because anger was, the to-go reaction to many things in the past. Yes, it is readily available, but I'm learning that often it masks, disappointment, hurt.
Right.
Betrayal, but most importantly, failed expectation.
Right. Okay. Do you see yourself as protective of others?
Unfortunately, yes.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
When you sense that they need protection, or just because that's the way you protect people in your life?
Good question. I'm learning to be a better responder, but my natural reactive response is to be protective,
Right.
especially people around me,
Sure.
like my employees or friends. But as I get older, I don't think he needs my protection. Is often the answer, or he or she.
That's a good description of it. What about vulnerability? Can you tell me what that means for you in your life? Vulnerability.
An opportunity to experience, really.
Was it always like that? You described something before from earlier in your life that would seem to me to have made you very vulnerable.
Yeah. I think I'm still very vulnerable because being a person that's guided mostly by his feelings. But the value that I see in being vulnerable is that it allows me to experience more deeply and see more. I think for me the opposite of vulnerable is to be protected. And when you're protected, you don't see as much.
Right.
But I've learned to protect myself within my vulnerability. I detect the situations, and then I've learned that I cannot be the person that I normally am, so I need to protect myself.
Right.
But
you
generally,
don't deny your vulnerability.
No, I mean, generally in life, I live a pretty vulnerable life. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself good at observing things?
Visually, yes.
Okay.
Emotionally, yes. Logically, not so much.
When you're interested in something, how deeply do you get involved in learning about it? I mean, obviously you're very deeply.
Yeah.
It sounds like being a chef, the learning process is an ongoing thing. But are there other things that that when you get involved in it and you're interested in it, do you keep going with it? Do you keep yourself involved in learning about it?
Yes, I can get manic about stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, when I'm interested in something, I go after it.
What's important about that to you?
To understand the naked truth.
Okay.
To decipher opinions from possibly the actual truth. Because really knowledge is just a lot of opinions.
Right.
So how do you decipher, how do you gain knowledge with educated, knowing, thoughtful opinions?
How important is privacy to you?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if it's, we're talking about, privacy is not that important for me because I don't have much to hide.
Good.
But, as Chef Serge, I don't want people to know my personal life. But if they do, there's not much. I mean, I live a pretty open life.
Got it. How do you feel about small talk?
Sometimes it's necessary. I wish I were better at it.
That's interesting. Wow. Do you ever get the feeling that talking to others or certain social activities drain your energy?
Can you repeat that one more time?
So in other words, and it follows up on the small talk question. It was interesting. I wouldn't have guessed at that answer. You said, I wish I were better at it. You ever get the feeling that talking to others or certain social activities just drain your energy?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Could you give me an example of one?
Well, I did this gathering that I really didn't want to participate in. I just thought that they liked Cerebon and I should go and do it to show camaraderie in the community.
Right.
And I didn't care for the people. I didn't care the people that were going there. I wish I had an employee that could have gone and done it.
Right.
And so many people came to say hello. So many people came, and there's only so much you can talk about with people that you don't enjoy.
Right.
So that to me is draining. But in situations where I am completely myself and I'm surrounded by people that I'm interested or I find knowledgeable or I'm intrigued by them, it becomes a great source of inspiration, discussion, learning opportunity, seeing how somebody that is of the same disposition in different ways deals with a different situation or sees a different book,
Got it. When you go to a social gathering, would you say you were the first to leave or the last, and why? That's a general question.
Yeah. No, neither.
Neither.
I'm not the first to arrive. I'm not the last to leave.
Sounds like it's based on how you described the answer before. It can be draining if it's something you're really not interested in.
Yeah.
Or if it's a social gathering you're interested in, you might be there to the very end,
Yeah.
or if it's when you're not, you'll show up and move along.
Yeah. I guess the way that I can answer that is I'm really aware of, sensitive to like social etiquette. You don't want to be the last to leave.
Right.
So,
Right.
and if I want to continue the conversation and I'm really having a great time, I'll make sure that I give my phone number or email, so we can stay in touch. I've learned that, whereas before it wasn't like that. I would definitely be the last.
How much of your attention and energy goes into planning positive and pleasurable future possibilities? We talked a little bit about planning or scanning for something in the future.
Yeah.
That was on a danger level. This is about what could be interesting about Friday night or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, those type of plannings for me these days are travel. So I am definitely planning on a trip to Iran. I'm planning on a trip to Armenia. So they're exciting.
That's exciting.
And they're fun, and to be wise about it, and frugal. That's another thing. I'm learning to be frugal in my old age.
But you wouldn't say that, a trip like that, holding up a trip like that, because it is in the future and you need to plan it. You wouldn't say that if you don't have something like that coming up in your life, that it's kind of like, what's going on? It's not a. You tell me, but
No. Again,
it doesn't sound like you need to plan.
no.
the future.
Previously, I would have to have something to look forward to.
Right.
Now I'm a lot more of, how am I going to fill my basket today with the day that I have?
Interesting. What would you say is your attitude toward having fun? You answered very early on that you're able to relax.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how fun is described. For me, it's important for me to enjoy my days.
Okay.
And I have learned to find joy in the things that I do.
Good. But it doesn't.
Except paperwork.
So but it's not based on the concept of fun. It has to be fun for me to have any value for it.
No.
Okay.
No.
How often would you say you overbook your schedule?
Happens this time of the year, happens all the time. It's not that I overbook it.
Right.
It's just that the demand of me is incredibly rich. And I'm very grateful. I could just have a job and be bored sitting at a desk. It's not that type of a
So
job.
it sounds like it's cyclically related, or it has a cyclical nature to it. It's not something you do just because some people say, I'm always overbooking my schedule.
No.
Do you focus on one thing at a time?
I'm not that important.
I disagree. Do you focus on one thing at a time, or do you enjoy having a variety of things to stay focused, to focus on simultaneously?
That's an interestingly posed question. I don't enjoy it, but that's just naturally how I am.
Okay.
So I often have to focusing just on one thing.
Right.
Because I have a tendency to be busy with three. I'm one of those guys that will be reading 3 books at the same time.
Right. Okay, but you're able to focus on one thing when you catch yourself not doing it, or you need to do it.
Yeah, I've learned to create time slots for myself. I mean, I don't know if this answers the question or not, but yesterday I edited photos. But while I was editing photos, I wanted to listen to this song. So okay, I can do those things.
Right.
But then as I was listening to this one piece by Chopin, I thought, oh, I should play this song. So I started playing the piano.
Right.
But I was already doing. So I'm learning to sort of myself discipline. Okay, after I've done this, I can play the piano. So and it helps me. It's helpful for me in the kitchen. It's not helpful. It's helpful in the creative process of in the kitchen, but not so outside.
Right.
So I'm learning the difference.
What about finishing things? How easy is it for you to get past the beginning of things and stay focused until the end or completion?
That's another good question. I am a lot better at finishing things. I wasn't, but I'm a lot better at finishing things and giving myself a little bit of a reward. I like a dog. I have to tell myself, well, after you finish this because then this will be your reward. So I've learned to do that. I'm not a natural finisher.
On a scale of 1 to 10, because I think this is true for everybody, or mostly everybody, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say is the importance of having options in your life? Really important? Not so important? Sort of important?
I'm such a circumstantial type of a guy. I mean, in my personal life, it's a great luxury. I mean, yeah, it's very important. But in my professional life, I don't think I have that many options, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
How would you describe the feelings that come up for you when you are faced with or imposed with limitations and restrictions?
My natural tendencies are: is it necessary? Can I do something about it? That's my natural tendency. But then, if there's nothing I can do about it, then it's like I accept it.
Yeah. Great. Well, I really appreciate all your answers. Based on what we've talked about today, I'd say you want to, I'm going to give you a book that you can take home and read and start to look into this if you'd like to. I'd say you want to take a look at types 4. I think type 3 has some relevance, and I think that type 2 has some relevance for you. My sense is that 4, 3, and 2 are more important to you, and that 4, your ability to be expressive, creative, very, very tied to type 4. The Enneagram has each type. We all have a little bit of each type in us. What happens is it's to me it was very interesting to finally get identified to a type. It took me a long time. As I told you.
Mm-hmm.
I started reading about this a long time ago. It took me a long time to figure out my type because I was confused by all the other types. I said, yeah, I got that. I went right down the line. Finally, something resonated. It's not to say that what I'm telling you today is what it is. It's not. It's not a diagnosis of any clarity. It's to give you something to look at. I'll give you a book, and it has all the descriptions and things about the 9 types, and you can read about it. And if you have any questions, we can talk about it more, or look into it further. Again, there may well be bits and pieces of all types in this, so there may be more than one that makes sense, and that's part of the process of figuring out your type. Again, I'd encourage you to read more about them and the system as a whole if you're interested. And again, you can contact me to spend more time talking about this. And that's really it. Thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thanks. These are good questions to think about.
Yeah,
hopefully it's helpful for you.
It's totally helpful for me. So again, I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks for your time today.
You're very welcome.
Great.